The following podcast is based on pure speculation and limited internet research. We're not exactly dealing with facts here, but kind of diet facts.
Yeah, we're not historians. We're just idiots with a laptop.
Yeah, we're not pretending to be. So if you think we're wrong, feel free to correct us, and we'll do our best to fix the problem.
Thank you so much.
I got hymns here. Get them while they're holy, fresh from God's brain to your mouth.
He's God here in this radio station. Smite me! Almighty smiter!
The Bible is black and white.
I have such doubts.
Get out of here, devil!
I'm a God. I'm not the God. I don't think.
And you will know my name is the Lord!
We're on a mission from God.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the podcast.
Believe it or not. Is that what we're going
I think we're going to go with that,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
I'm Trevor Poelman.
And I'm Damien Doepping.
This is our first episode.
Very first, number one.
Number one. Probably the first podcast ever recorded.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So bear with us if we suck. Or if we don't know what we're talking about. Okay, so let's just get right into it. Damien, what is your background as far as, like, religion goes?
Mine is actually very, very limited. I didn't grow up in a religious family at all. Okay. My dad's side of the family is a little more, I think, Catholic, Christian kind of thing. And most of actually what I know is from a girlfriend I had in high school. Her family was Christian. So
oh, okay.
that's like the most of what I know about it is from that, like secondhand.
And I'm the opposite.
Yeah.
I grew up in... Okay, so my family grew up, was raised... My parents were both raised in this denomination called the Christian Reformed Church. Mm-hmm. I went there till I was 6, and then we went to this non-denominational church. Well, it's like sort of just a small denomination, and then I ended up working at a Baptist church and a Lutheran church, and I went to school to be a youth pastor, so I kind of the opposite. A lot of experience, and then eventually walked away and from all of it. So I think we're in the same place now.
Yeah, I
we
think
just have different.
Probably, just different experiences getting there.
Have you ever heard the term christianese?
Christianese?
Yeah.
No, I haven't.
Okay.
What is that?
The whole Christian subculture. Mm-hmm. They're like almost in a bubble, you'd say.
Yeah. So
they start having their own phrases and terms that mean something to them, so that like certain words or things to say, like to a Christian, someone who grew up in the church, it would just be like you immediately understand what you're talking about, but everybody else it just sounds like nonsense. Like example, have you ever heard the term "washed in the blood"?
It sounds familiar, but I don't know if I probably heard it and didn't know what it meant, so.
The belief is Jesus died for your sins, and so if you don't have any sins, then you're clean, so it was him giving up his blood that cleaned you, but instead they say washed in the blood, which is pretty dark.
Okay.
Yeah. When you think about it, something like growing up, I never thought of how like disturbing that sounded, but
it's a pretty great inside joke to have.
Like, yeah.
Oh, we just bathed in the blood, eh?
Yeah. Just taking a blood bath. So today I thought for our first episode we would talk about something called the Great Awakening.
Mm-hmm. The Great Awakening.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is obviously some big thing within the church, probably some restructuring or rethinking of something. I don't know what though.
Yeah, that's a good guess, I guess. Yeah, it's pretty close. You know, like the Enlightenment. Yeah. So it was kind of a Christian response to the Enlightenment.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was during the 1730s and 40s. So this is old.
Where was this happening?
Mostly in the British colonies in America. Okay. So like before. Oh, so
this was in...
This is in North America, yeah. So yeah, it's sometimes called the First Great Awakening and sometimes called just the Great Awakening. And I think that's because they've tried many, many times to have another awakening. So there's...
Just hasn't worked out.
Well, there's been the Second Great Awakening, and then like the third one is disputed, but this is the First Great Awakening.
Maybe if they had better inside jokes.
Yeah, exactly.
It would work a little better for them, but...
Less blood jokes. Yeah.
Okay, so this happened 1700s.
Yeah, 1700s, 1730s.
In America.
In America, yeah. So basically...
So at that time, that was a lot of people at that time who were like, a bit before, they were leaving the UK and stuff like that because of different... And Europe.
So like, they're like the Puritans came
a lot
over
of
because that was
religious
a big,
changes anyway.
And then, because in England, it's the Church of England, right? Or the Anglicans.
Yeah.
For the Great Awakening, there was a lot more structure and stuff like that in the churches. So like it would be like in the Catholic Church, it's like the Pope and the hierarchy there.
Yeah.
But then in the Church of England, it's like the Queen or the King, and it kind of has that role. And then there's like deacons and bishops.
And that whole thing was just started because he wanted to get divorced.
Yeah, that's
wasn't
right.
it, too?
Yeah. Which is so
Henry
funny.
VIII, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, I have an Anglican priest friend we should have on at some point because I'd like to pick his brain about some stuff.
That's interesting when you think about it. Someone kind of hijacking the church just so that
you
can get unmarried to somebody. And everyone's just like,
okay. I guess it saved her life, right? Like he doesn't have to execute her.
I guess
Find an
that's
excuse
true.
to execute her. So it all started. There was a man named John Edwards.
Is he the guy crossing over?
Yeah, I was gonna say, isn't that? Yeah, so it's Jonathon Edwards, and I think that is the crossing over guy.
It might be the same guy.
Which we'll probably talk about him on the spiritualism
We'll
episode.
have to get to that. Are we gonna have to watch some of it too?
Oh, I guess we'll have to
watch it.
Oh, so good. But he was a Presbyterian preacher. I think he was kind of... I read somewhere, I think, that he was like what's the word? Generational. Like his dad was a preacher, and backward.
It was
and stuff
in the
like
family. I guess this is something too. I don't even really know what Presbyterian and the differences between all these things.
So
we don't have to get into that now.
Yeah. Oh, we will over time.
We will.
So,
yeah. So I think maybe we'll continue with this.
Yeah.
I'm just putting like a little footnote. here.
Footnote here. Yeah, and another thing, like if someone were to say the word Calvinist to you,
I've heard it.
Yeah.
I think I might remember like a few small things about it, but outside of that, I couldn't tell you.
Okay. Yeah. It's like, it's such a trip because it's so funny that, I should say this right off the bat. I should have said it when I started, but I just Googled this shit. Like, I am not a historian or anything like that, obviously. But there's some stuff that I just, like, grew up hearing about all the time.
Yeah, of
that's
course.
and Calvinist was one. So that's just a mode of theology. A lot of people affected by the Great Awakening were from Calvinist denominations. Presbyterian is one of those. And Calvinism has this belief in predestination.
Okay.
Do you know what that is?
No.
Okay.
I've heard it before. Again,
it's like, what's that movie, The Adjustment Bureau? Have you seen The Adjustment Bureau? So everything's planned out.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
and it's like, there's free will, but you're still, like, the choices you make...
and it doesn't... Yeah, okay. It doesn't matter. So, it's all going to kind of work out to a certain way. Anyway.
Yeah, because, like, if you're either going to go to heaven or you're not.
Mm-hmm.
And,
well, if that's the case, then what does it matter what you do?
Yeah, that's the thing. Well, it's funny, too, because John Edwards, actually, like, because there's a lot of people talking at the time, like, hey, maybe that's not a thing. Maybe we should put more effort into doing good works for people.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it is with certain preachers and, like, not liking the idea of people wanting to do good things. Like...
I don't know. Is it like something where it kind of, the idea of doing good things kind of goes against certain dogmas?
Because it's like, it's been a debate since a lot of the books of the Bible were written about whether it's by faith or by works, right?
Yeah.
So people were starting to say, oh, maybe we should put more emphasis on works, and this made Jonathon Edwards angry. Okay. So he preached a sermon. Did I write down the name of it? Oh yeah, okay. So he preached a sermon at his church called Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God. And this is what sparked this whole movement. It was just this like fiery yelling.
Yeah. Where did this happen?
This happened in...
Do you have that? I don't know.
I'm just trying to... that was in Northampton, Massachusetts.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And this was at his church there. And so he preached this like passionate sermon, and it got kind of people interested in his church, and everybody was like riled up and asking for forgiveness, and And you'll see like a lot of, when you look at there's all these numbers about like how many people converted, but it's not like people who didn't believe in God converting to Christianity or whatever. It was like, these are all Christians.
Yeah, this would have been, most people would have been at least some
like we'll talk in a bit too about a lot of slaves converted, and that was the first time for a lot of that. For that, that's like why there's black churches and stuff like that, because that's the first time.
Is that something to do with them having less of an emphasis on predestination, where it has a little bit more of that free will kind of?
Yeah, well, they still had a lot of predestination in the Great Awakening. So, but a lot of it was they believed. Another prominent guy is George Whitefield. It's an interesting one too, but both him and Edwards preached that black people were equal in heaven. So don't
I like the little asterisks.
Little asterisks, like we still need you to do our work for free, so we're not going to say we're. Okay. But in some churches, that they actually started having, especially in the north, they started having more integrated churches, like with black and white deacons, leaders, and even sometimes preachers would be black too. Okay. But that not as much south.
Yeah.
But also, like, so Jonathon Edwards did this sermon and a bunch of other sermons like that were just passionate, like crying from the pulpit, punching it, just as opposed to, like, in the past, preachers would just be like, just spouting their theology, reading, kind of monotone, and like they finally put a lot more effort. And I feel like a lot of it just had to do with theatrics. Yeah. Yeah, where...
I mean, it's always kind of been a bit of that, hasn't it? Especially
I think so.
With a lot of the Catholic Church and... Like,
there's like the...
circumstance
and
the
they
ceremony.
walk with the incense. I remember once when I was Lutheran, I saw this one preacher that just like took the holy water or whatever, and it's probably not what it's called in Lutheran Church, but whatever. Yeah. And just started splashing it on everybody in the audience, going, "Remember your baptism." It was so weird, man. Wow. Yeah.
But I went to Ozfest when I was 16. Yeah. And Ozzy Osbourne had water cannons that he sprayed into the crowd during a set. So
they should do that. Get the holy water.
I don't think he said anything about baptisms though.
One time when I worked at a coffee shop, I accidentally spilled a cup of water on my coworker, and I was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And then I was like, "But I did just kind of baptize you, so you'll thank me in heaven." But George Whitefield or Whitfield, I've heard both pronunciations, was the next guy, and this guy actually was trained as an actor first.
Oh, okay.
So he comes over.
So he came in.
Any picture I see of these guys though, they're wearing those white wigs,
those powdered wigs.
Yeah, like what? That's so. Anyways, that's a side
I used to know more about that. I'll do some research.
Okay,
on that. I'll do the wig research.
You do the wig research. You're a wig guy.
I'm the wig guy.
Yeah. So he came in, like, people speak like super highly of him. When I was like looking at videos and reading articles about this whole movement, is people just were enthralled by Whitefield. I heard some like 30,000 people would come to hear him preach, and this was in the 1730s. So it's like there weren't stadiums and stuff like that, and no microphones. So he would just have to yell. I guess that's where the theater training comes in.
That's what helps.
You have to. I was always told you have to project to the old lady in the back of the room, or the deaf old lady in the back of the room. So
I don't know why they don't just move her closer.
Yeah, exactly. The one thing I kept seeing too is that he would bring his own fold-up pulpit.
He had a fold-up pulpit.
Yeah, so he'd bring it with him, set it up, and then he would preach from that. Yeah.
I mean, I guess there's something personal about that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right? It adds a little bit a flair to
it.
Yeah. And if there's a church that doesn't have one or something too.
Yeah. Well, they couldn't fit in any of the churches with all the people. That's why it would be like in fields and stuff.
I guess that's fair. So we don't need one then.
Yeah.
You don't want a full one.
And you don't want to
walk around like
a table or something. Yeah. But and so those were the two main guys. There's also Samuel Davies was another guy. He actually converted a lot of black people, I think, I don't know, I think they were all pro-slavery, though. I could be wrong about that. George Whitefield actually, later on in his career, fought to re-legalize slavery in Georgia.
Yeah.
Because I guess they outlawed it, and then he got it reinstated.
He fought to re-legalize it.
But he also said, he was one of the ones that's like, yeah, black people are equal in heaven. Yeah. But
okay, so far we kind of got the people who are preaching this stuff, and it's kind of the numbers. But what was the main drive behind the awakening?
It was almost like a shift, right? Mm-hmm. So everybody was kind of religious and Christian or whatever.
Yeah.
There was different sects, but mostly it was Church of England or different things like that. Mm-hmm. And when this happened, it changed the focus from knowledge of theology to a personal relationship. Okay. That's where you hear like people say it's not a religion, it's a relationship. I don't know if you've heard that phrase. I've heard that, or born again.
Yeah,
is a big one at this point, where where Jesus said you have to be reborn, and like so the whole born again thing came out of this, where it's not about just going to church on Sundays anymore. They really hit it into people like now you're going to have to have like a personal relationship. It's not just about being part of this religion anymore. Like you have to make an effort every day.
It's more part of your life.
Yeah, and that's when people, I'm sure people owned Bibles before that, but that's when it became more common for you to own a Bible and you to read your Bible every day. And that's when because when I was a kid, you would read the Bible at dinner table with family. That's when that started. Mm-hmm. So it's just this huge shift in the responsibility, just being the preacher to preach at you on Sundays, to you owning your religion and what you believe. So which caused I guess when it went south is really what started the Bible Belt. Mm-hmm. And what would eventually become the religious right will be a different episode altogether.
Yeah.
But what really started that kind of southern religion
mm-hmm.
that is just embedded in their culture.
Yeah.
And I think I've never been south that far south, but I've seen pictures of towns where it's just there's crosses and billboards and a church on every corner.
I've never been those kind of places in the South.
Yeah.
I can't imagine.
Yeah.
You see enough of it on TV, right?
Oh, yeah. I've actually been to a tent revival. And that's where this started, the tent revivals, too. And so I have been to one of those, and those are insane. And I feel like that's what this was like at the time. Mm-hmm. Because it's everybody just jumping up and down going, yeah, preach it, brother. And then he's up on the stage. It's always a he, by the way.
Yeah. Do the tent revivals, those are often will have faith healing and
and that's a different
is that a different type of that?
Because I feel like faith healing didn't really start until as a movement. Mm-hmm. I could be wrong about this, but until about the turn of the century, 1900s.
And that getting into channeling the spirit into during that as well.
Yeah. So that's when it went more into Pentecostalism and stuff like that. Okay. And I think that was 1906 that whole thing started. So
okay.
But at this point it's just repenting and weeping, and that was the thing with George Whitefield too. He would just get up there and he would just start crying in the middle of his sermon, and it's just really passionate.
Yeah. Well, it's the whole thing. People's minds aren't changed by facts; they're changed by emotions.
Oh, exactly. So, yeah.
So this was a push more towards a personal God. Is that kind of what drove multi-denominational kind of ideas?
And there was so many schisms after that. Because when you put the onus on the individual to read the Bible and to discover, you're going to get so many different interpretations, because before that it's just church bodies agreeing on things and being this is what we believe, and now it's everybody has their own can think about it themselves, so you just have schism after schism, and oh man, I read one number that within that first 10 years, it was 80 denominations started.
Really?
Yeah. So yeah, it's insane. And and I think Baptists, the Baptist Church came out of that. Could be very wrong about that. But no, just a lot of Baptist and Methodist preachers kind of jumped on board with this. Mm-hmm. And and so. And it also, another big thing that happened as a result of this was, a lot of people say that this created a separate identity from England.
Yeah.
Because this whole movement happened in North America.
Almost a way to kind of further declare an independence.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So even though it had so many schisms, there was still like these overall unity within the colonies as a result of this.
Yeah, it was their own identity.
Yeah, exactly. It also, like, we briefly talked about, like, women, but they still wouldn't let women have leadership positions and stuff like that. But there were, a little bit more freedom. Where, like, they could lead groups between them, and a lot of them would write and do a lot of writings, because I guess that's different than preaching. So that, like, women authors became more prevalent and stuff like that.
But that would mostly be for other women too.
Yeah, for other women.
So
yeah,
it was
exactly.
they were allowed to do that, but in the confines of
Yeah.
it being for other women.
There's also a push for higher education as a result, because they wanted everybody to be able to read, and they wanted everybody to.
Well, I mean, if it's a personal thing,
exactly.
everyone needs to be able to read the Bible.
And even Samuel Davies, one of the main guys, he became the president of Princeton. I think actually
something like that would have been
Princeton,
a huge thing just for literacy and
Yeah.
education in North America
Yeah,
too.
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was there much of a bleed back to the old world, like the Europe and
so
stuff
they
with
would
a lot
actually
of
go
these too,
on
or-
tour, I guess.
Yeah.
They would actually go on preaching tours to England as well. George Whitefield was British, but he came to America to preach, and I believe he went back a number of times as well, but like just became really an American.
Yeah, because I know like a lot of the stuff is still pretty, like the Church of England's still a big part of it too.
Yeah.
But like outside of that,
But even
how much of it kind of is still entrenched today there?
Yeah, and I think in England, and I could be wrong with this, I think it's more like Church of England is still kind of the main one, but there are a lot of other
I think there's always going to be
denominations and stuff
people
as well.
moving around. But I know like in a lot of Europe, there are a lot more older church kind of organizations. So I just wasn't sure how much of this went back.
Yeah. Well, I think because like even in the States, like in Canada, it's still the Anglican Church, but in the States, it's Episcopalian, because they're not actually connected. It's the same theology, but they're not connected in the same hierarchy because of the independence. They didn't want that tie to England. They didn't want the Queen of England still being the head of the church.
Yeah.
So they're like that's been severed. And and then I think a lot of the preaching, I mean, that's pretty much all I have for the Great Awakening. I think like it caused a lot of change in North America, and a lot of movements came after it, because I think a lot of people were constantly trying to reinstate this feeling of awakening and revival and stuff like that. And like even you'll hear preachers today be like, it's a revival in the land, because it's like this was kind of such a big thing.
Well, did something like that, I'm sure the same kind of feeling with like something like Mormonism or something like that, where it started to be starting in America rather than somewhere else too.
Yeah.
And that's something where, don't they say that Jesus was from? Like,
well, Jesus came, I think in Mormonism, Jesus came from, like, after he rose from the dead, he visited North America.
Okay, I knew
and also,
like
the Garden of Eden was in America, and then after the flood and everything.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
It's interesting to see kind of what the context of what that was, and this idea of taking such an institution and then further incorporating it and making it into like a personal and individual thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably such a feeling at the time, just people's minds.
Oh yeah, and I think it. Well, and even like we talked about, is like the Enlightenment happened, and then a lot of people start leaving the church.
Yeah.
And so, like, you have, people leaving the church, people disagreeing with it, and, I mean, you're already not passionate about it, and then all of a sudden, like, these fiery people come in, and they're just really hitting you hard, and, like, you have this emotional response to it, and I mean, there's not a lot of other...
So it was even more of a lot of people trying to just... stop people from leaving.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'd say so.
Okay.
Yeah. Which is interesting, and like and I think from there you're gonna get Like, I mean, the things like Mormonism, that was a while later, and Seventh-day Adventists and different schisms, like big schisms like that, and Jehovah's Witnesses, like that's going to be a while later, but it's kind of out of the same idea of like just wanting to. Well,
it was during the expansion.
Mormonism came out of a guy who wanted to make money, but
well, did these guys end up making a lot of money?
They must have. You know what? They must have, because like we said, like they had a lot of political. They would have had a lot of political say after this.
Yeah,
and like if he's fighting to get slavery reinstated in Georgia, he's got some
a lot of sway. So.
Yeah, and. Yeah, and it's probably like the televangelist today.
Yeah,
it's like they got some money in their pocket.
That's a great place to start.
Yeah, I think so.
Can't you see you're not making Christianity better? You're just making rock and roll worse.
So I thought I'd do one little segment that I call what's a good name for it?
I don't know the segment.
Let's go with Christian rock lyric of the week.
Okay.
So I figured the Great Awakening was about facing your sin, turning from sin, and making sure that you're right with God. So let's talk about hell, you know? And there's a song, have you heard of the Newsboys?
No.
Okay. So the Newsboys
Am I going to have to learn all about Christian rock bands too?
You're going to have to learn that too, because the Newsboys were a rock band when I was a Christian rock band, so it's not the same. We're a Christian rock band when I was a teenager. And I loved them at the time. And they have one song called Breakfast.
Breakfast?
Yeah. And it's about a guy who loves breakfast foods and loves the Lord, and then dies unexpectedly.
Yeah.
And so at his funeral, they eat breakfast. So one of the lines goes, "When the toast is burnt and all the milk has turned, and Captain Crunch is waving farewell, may the song remind you that they don't serve breakfast in hell." So basically, if you weren't afraid of hell before the song came out, you're going to be now, because no breakfast.
That's a pretty messed up kind of message to send
isn't
out.
it?
And this was like geared towards like young people too, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Jesus.
Right.
It's kind of like, hey man, fuck you, you're not getting breakfast.
Yeah. What if that's all hell was, though? Like, it's
no
just
breakfast.
Like, oh, guys, I'm kind of hungry. I could really, like, just even a bagel or something. No breakfast! You have to wait till lunch!
I mean, I'm fine with it. I'm not that big on breakfast
me neither.
either.
I never eat breakfast. So I'd be fine in hell, I guess.
Yeah. I think we're going to do okay when we're down there.
Yeah.
And you're like, this is not so bad. That's what everyone's complaining about. Colin, on the other hand, our roommate, he truly would be in hell.
That's true.
Like, literally and figuratively.
Yeah.
He loves his breakfast.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Plus, he has sex outside of wedlock. All right. Thank you so much for listening, if this episode came out.
Let's hope so.
Yeah. And this has been Believe It or Not. I've been Trevor Poelman.
And I've been Damien Doepping.
Thank you so much.
We'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Work, 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 Sky Moon.